It is roughly 3,500 BC. The Mesopotamian sun is punishing. Flat, cracked earth stretches in every direction. There are no forests, no mountains, almost nothing but dust and heat. And yet, in the middle of all of this emptiness, something is rising. Something that has never existed before in the entire history of human civilization. A city. Not a village, not a camp, a city. With walls, temples, canals, and thousands upon thousands of people packed together in ways that would have been completely unthinkable to anyone alive just a few generations earlier. This place is called Uruk, and for centuries it is the most powerful, most advanced, most populated settlement on the face of the earth. At a time when most human beings live in small farming communities scattered across the ancient world, Uruk is doing something different entirely, something that changes everything. This is the story of how the world's first city works. And to understand it, there is only one way to do it: walk through it. Any journey into Uruk begins the same way for everyone who approaches it. From a merchant travelling from the distant highlands, from a farmer arriving from a nearby village, from a raiding party sizing up a target, every one of them sees the same thing first. The wall. It runs for around 9 kilometres, in a great ring around the entire city. Thousands upon thousands of mud bricks stacked and shaped into a barrier that stands several metres high. Later Sumerian tradition credits the legendary King Gilgamesh with building these walls. Whether Gilgamesh is a real historical figure or something closer to myth is a debate that still runs today. But the walls themselves are real. Archaeologists have excavated them. Running along that wall at regular intervals are semicircular bastions, towers that jut outward from the main face of the brick. Each one is positioned so that soldiers standing on top can look along the wall in both directions, covering the ground in front of it without blind spots. These are not decorative, they are firing positions. Archers stationed at the bastions can release arrows along the face of the wall while staying protected behind the brick. Anyone trying to scale or breach the wall in between towers is exposed on open ground with no cover. At this point in history, the region between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers is not a peaceful place. Rival settlements compete for land, water, and resources. Raiding is common. Conflict is a fact of life. So Uruk keeps a permanent garrison inside the walls, soldiers equipped with spears and bows, organised and supplied by the city itself. The city archives from this period record ration distributions to fighting men. The same grain economy that pays craftsmen and labourers also pays the soldiers who stand watch on the bastions above the plain. Entry into the city is controlled through gates, thick, reinforced openings in the wall wide enough to funnel traffic through in single file if needed. Guards stationed at the gate can inspect who is entering, collect tolls from merchants, and shut the city off entirely if threat demands it. But a wall is only as powerful as what it protects. So step through the gates and see what is actually inside. The noise hits first. Thousands of people moving through narrow streets, carrying goods, hauling grain, shouting across courtyards. At its peak, Uruk may hold somewhere between 40,000 and 80,000 people. There is simply nothing else like this anywhere on Earth at this time. At the centre of all of it sits the Eanna complex. The Eanna is not a single building, it is a precinct, a large walled enclosure containing multiple monumental structures arranged around open courtyards, each one built from the same fired and unfired mud brick that makes up every surface of this city. The complex covers an enormous footprint at the heart of Uruk, large enough that it functions almost as a city within the city. Inside the Eanna, different structures serve different functions. There are storehouses, long rectangular buildings with thick walls and no windows, designed to hold grain, oil, and textiles in quantities large enough to supply the city through lean months. There are workshops where craftsmen employed by the temple complex produce goods under the direction of overseers, weavers, potters, metalworkers, all of them working inside the precinct walls, their output tracked and distributed by the administrators above them. And then there are the scribes, seated in dedicated rooms, working at low tables, pressing a cut reed stylus into wet clay. The tablets they produce are small, often fitting in a single hand. On each one, rows of symbols pressed into the surface record transactions, a delivery of barley, a count of sheep, a list of workers, and the rations owed to them that day. When a tablet is finished, it is either filed in the storehouse archives or left to dry and harden as a permanent record. Thousands of these tablets survive to the present day. The people managing this complex are a distinct class. Above the scribes sit the overseers. Above the overseers sit the high administrators, figures with enough authority to authorize large transfers of grain and organize mass labor. These are the people the city cannot function without. They do not farm. They do not build. They manage. And their position inside the Eanna places them at the top of Uruk's social order below only the priests themselves. But all of those records, all of that grain being counted and tracked and distributed, it has to come from somewhere. And to understand where Uruk's wealth actually originates, the journey leads outside the walls entirely. Look at the land surrounding the city. The Euphrates runs nearby, but it floods in spring and drops to a trickle in summer, exactly when fields need water most. The flat plains around Uruk receive almost no rainfall of their own, so the city engineers the landscape. A main feeder canal is cut from the Euphrates, and from it, secondary channels branch outward at intervals, each one angled to carry a slow, gravity-fed flow across the fields. Wooden sluice gates placed at key junctions control how much water enters each branch, letting administrators direct water to specific plots on specific days. The canals silt up seasonally, and gangs of workers are organised every year to dredge them back out, their labour recorded on the same clay tablets in the Eanna. What this system produces is grain, not just enough to eat, enough to store, trade, and pay every person working inside the city walls. Because grain is the currency of this world, labourers are not paid in coins. They are paid in daily rations of barley and beer, measured in standardised vessels and recorded by a scribe. Farmers connected to the canal network hand a portion of their harvest to the temple authorities each season. This is how the city funds itself, how it pays its soldiers, feeds its priests, and builds its monuments. All of that wealth, all of those people freed up to do something other than farm, they all have to live somewhere. And what they build when they crowd together inside those walls is unlike anything that has existed before. Walk deeper into the city and the architecture closes in. Tight mud brick structures packed together, sharing walls, built almost on top of each other. The streets between them are narrow, some barely wide enough for two people to pass. But each structure folds around a central open courtyard. This courtyard is the heart of the house. It is where cooking happens, where light enters, where air moves through, where the family gathers after the sun goes down. In a city this dense, the courtyard is the only private space most people will ever have. The city has grown organically, expanding outward and filling in over generations. There is no single design grid here. New buildings go up wherever space allows. From above, it looks like a maze. From inside, it is simply where people live. But within all this crowding, the differences between households are visible in the stone. Some structures are large, well-built, multiple rooms surrounding a generous courtyard. Others are cramped, barely enough space for the people inside. Uruk is not an equal place. It has an elite and it has labourers, administrators and slaves, priests and craftsmen. All of them pressed together inside those 9 kilometres of wall in the world's first urban neighbourhood. And presiding over all of it, visible from almost any point in the city, is the reason many people believe Uruk deserves to exist at all. Rise up above the rooftops and look toward the highest point in the city. 2 structures dominate everything around them, the White Temple and the Eanna Temple complex. The White Temple sits on top of a large raised platform, a structure that will eventually evolve into what later civilizations build as the ziggurat. Getting to it requires climbing. It is elevated deliberately, lifted above the streets and the courtyards, placed as close to the sky as the technology of the time allows. It is plastered white. In the punishing Mesopotamian sun, it catches the light and throws it back. Visible from a great distance across the flat plain surrounding the city, the White Temple is what travellers see before they see anything else, before the walls even fully come into view. That gleaming white structure on the horizon announces one thing above all else: the gods live here. In Uruk's world, the gods do not merely watch over the city from a distant sky, they own it. The city exists to serve them, and the temple is how that service is organised. The temple complex controls land. It employs workers. It stores grain. It manages the redistribution of resources to every labourer and craftsman working in its name. The chief deity of Uruk is the sky god Anu, whose temple occupies the highest point, and Eanna, the goddess of love and war, whose complex gives the administrative quarter its name. Eanna literally means house of heaven. The boundary between religion and government in Uruk does not exist. The priests managing the temples are the same people managing the economy. The sacred and the administrative are one single system. The gods provide the authority, the temple provides the structure, and the scribes with their clay tablets keep the records that hold it all together. To live in Uruk is to live in a city that believes itself to be the earthly centre of divine power. The temples are not decoration. They are the force that makes every other part of the city legitimate in the minds of the people inside it. Uruk does not last forever. No city does. Over centuries, rival powers rise. The balance of the ancient world shifts. Eventually, Uruk fades from dominance, absorbed into the larger story of Mesopotamian history. But what it leaves behind is impossible to overstate. The cities that rise after it, Nippur, Lagash, Babylon, all of them inherit something from Uruk. The writing system spreads across the ancient world and eventually becomes the foundation of every written language that follows. The canal engineering becomes a model copied across Mesopotamia for thousands of years. The temple economy, the idea of a divine institution managing land and labour and wealth, shapes how civilizations organise power for millennia. Uruk does not just build a city, it builds the idea of what a city. And that idea, the wall, the record keepers, the water carved through dry earth, the people crowded into narrow streets, the gods rising white above everything, spreads outward from that flat Mesopotamian plain and never stops. In the middle of a landscape with no stone, no timber, and barely any rain, a group of people stack mud bricks into something the world has never seen, and the world never goes back to what it was before.